So we're joined here today by the MSB guys. We have Jonathan Gullman and Daniel Gullman, the two brothers who are leading the company. And we'll have a short discussion, introduce MSB to you all in Israel. First of all, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
It's a real pleasure for us. What can you tell us about MSB company, how it started, what were the foundations?
Yeah, so my brother and I have been in this business, almost our entire lives. The company is about 30 years old and I'm 33. So basically born into it. I went off, became a mechanical engineer, he became an electrical engineer, so our skills complement each other, and we've been working for the last 10 years very hard, growing the company, almost doubling every year in size, and really excited for what we're able to work on. We're based out of California, and we do a lot of vertical integration with our manufacturing, so it's kind of our specialty is like in-house design, and it's kind of our passion to match the manufacturing with the design, which allows us to make really powerful products for the price points.
Probably the most known product of MSB is the DAX. So last year in the high-end show, we came for many rooms, and many rooms chose to use your DAX. And every room that I entered, it was always something special. It was always so smooth and so, like analog. And I know that you used to have a DAC that you called an analog DAC, which is kind of funny. But when you hear it, you really understand what you guys mean.
Yeah.
So what makes your DAC so special?
Yeah, so we started with DACs. It was like some of our very first products was improving the DACs in transports. And we just took that technology and kept improving it and started with the ladder DAC. That was sort of our first big leap into an analog like digital sound. And we've been consistently improving upon those designs and reinventing what can be done with ladder DACs. And now we are at the point where we have what we call a hybrid DAC, which does DSD natively. Let's see. Yeah, give the mic over here for a second. See, this is where he's going to know a little bit more.
Yeah, so when it comes to our DACs, there's three main cores technologies in every DAC. So when we started, we were using off-the-shelf chips, off-the-shelf digital filtering, just like every other company. And then, as Daniel said, we introduced our ladder DAC. We're on the fourth version of our discrete ladder DAC. And to be clear, like what we have as a ladder DAC, it's a balanced DAC module. It is not a traditional R2R ladder DAC. It is something custom for us. We call it the hybrid DAC because it can be both a native DSD DAC or a native PCM DAC. So depending on the incoming audio, we can either reconfigure it to be a massive parallel single bit DAC or a multi-bit PCM DAC. The other two technologies we developed from the ground up is we do our own custom digital filtering. We do it in Shark processors, DSPs, because we find that they're most powerful, the type of audio processing we need to do. So as the DSP technology improves, we can get more powerful DSPs. We can do larger and larger digital filters. And then the third area of technology in our DACs that's unique is the clocks. So we do not use a commercially available off-the-shelf clock module or clock chip. We first developed our clock, and we had one version. We called it the Femto 77. It's a complete in-house design. They are ovenized clocks, and in the module, there's actually two different circuits, one for 44.1 and its multiples, and one for 48 and its multiples. So, every technology in our DAC has been designed and developed in-house. It isn't a commercially available. We do our own clocks, we do our own DACs, we do our own digital filtering. So, and then of course, we have all of our different inputs, and each one of those, is unique and special. So what we go for with an input is we try to keep it isolated, synchronous, and so it's using the clock. So like, for example, if you're using the USB or the render, it's actually running off the audio clock in the DAC. So the clock is being fed from the DAC, and it's controlling the source. And so that way there isn't, a similar but slightly different, clock coming into the unit.
Okay. So another thing that is special in your DACs is, of course, the modularity. So everyone can customize what inputs they want, what outputs they want. Can you say a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So since we've been making DACs for our entire lives, we've been in this business and we know what happens. What makes a DAC go obsolete isn't the clock, it isn't the output, it isn't the digital filtering. What makes a digital product go obsolete is the user interface. How do you connect to it? When I first started, USB audio was brand new. Like almost nobody had support for USB audio. We've had like 6 different versions of USB interfaces because as that technology improves, we come out with a new interface. So instead of having to replace your DAC 6 times, you just have to replace the USB module. So in all of our current products, we realize the thing that makes things go obsolete is the interface. So all of our inputs are modules. So, when Ethernet audio started becoming a new format, we created a renderer module. And then Rune became a format, or a new interface, the Rune Ready. So we made a Rune compatible module. And so each time a new format or an interface comes out, we can just develop a new module, and then we can just ship the module and the user can replace it with no tools or anything. Every module has a lever arm on it, so you can just pull out the module, plug in the new one, the DAC recognizes it, you don't need to update the software, and your DAC is now current with all the latest formats. When MQA came out, we just created the MQA module. So even for the analog DAC, which is 10 years old at this point.
Exactly what I wanted to ask. What would be the oldest DAC that you guys provide?
That was our first DAC with modules. So with it, you can plug in the renderer module, and it's now a Rune-ready certified DAC. Yep. And it's 10 years old.
Cool.
You don't have to throw the DAC out to buy a new one to have Rune and MQA and the latest USB formats. You just replace the module.
That's an amazing flexibility.
So because in our lives, we like to see our product used for as long as possible. We don't like seeing things wasted or end up in the landfill. So, it's our belief to support our products for as long as we possibly can. We will repair any of our products, no matter the age. If it's possible, we'll try to fix it. If we can come out with a new input interface to make an old product current, we will. Because, we're in this for the long term.
Excellent. So another thing that is also common to all of your products is the external power supplies, especially with the DACs. So there's also options to upgrade the power supply as you go and so on. How important is it to have the power externally? So we know many customers, even high-end customers, have everything in one box. You guys have it all external, and there's also an upgrade path. So how important is that?
Yeah, so the only product right now that has a power supply upgrade option is the discrete DAC. Everything else is now standardized. So the reason why we do external power supplies is primarily for performance. If you take the external power supply and you move it out of the toroidal transformer and the incoming AC, and you remove it from the DAC chassis, it lowers the noise in the chassis because even the magnetic fields from the transformer can couple into it. So if you stack the DAC, some magnetic fields still couple, but if you put it on a separate shelf, you can literally hear the sound change. So literally taking the DAC and lifting it up 6 inches, you can hear the effect of the coupling. Power is getting worse in every country every year. Everything is getting switching supplies, solar inverters, you name it. Power is terrible now. So as a result, we want to make sure we can filter the noise before it even gets into the chassis of the DAC. So we have custom transformers with external and internal shielding. It has magnetic shielding on the inside and internal shielding for high frequency noise. Because AC isn't just 50 or 60 hertz anymore. It has 10 megahertz noise coupled on it. So we keep the power supply separate because we're trying to keep the high frequency noise on the power and the distortion out of the chassis.
Okay, thank you. So next question I wanted to ask is also a technical question, is about the preamplifier. So I know that many companies, it's also the classical approach to have the preamplifier as a pure analog, completely separate from the digital. And you guys, you are manufacturing great power amplifiers, and you have the DACs that can be also the preamplifiers. So also I think that this year we see many companies, they do the same thing. They have the analog and the digital together in one chassis. But you guys been doing that for a while. What do you think are the advantages of that? Do you think the analog preamplifier is something that doesn't add to the system?
Yeah, so the best thing a preamp can do to the sound is nothing. In our opinion, the reason why preamps became incredibly popular is first they were needed for analog sources. But the reason why they continue to get used with digital is in the early days of digital was very harsh. And so, you could buy a different preamp to tune the sound to try to filter out that harshness. But now that our DAC technology has improved, it's not harsh anymore, it's not fatiguing, so you don't need to try to mask the distortion or the harshness that you hear with digital. Because the early days of digital, you couldn't listen for 20 hours. You couldn't listen 10 hours straight without getting fatigued, but now you can. So, it's always been our belief the best thing you can do to an analog signal is nothing. If the information is lost, it's lost. You can't bring back detail. You can't bring back resolution. So we've always had the option for an internal volume module. In our current DACs, the reference and the select DAC, it's a completely passive analog volume control. There's no op amps, there's no transistors, there's no active parts in the entire signal path from the point of conversion out. And as a result, we're not coloring it. I mean, if you look at the availability of op amps, there are hundreds of different op amps to choose from. The reason why there's hundreds of op amps is every amplifier circuit has its trade-offs. There is no perfect analog amplifier. So, why have one if you don't need it? So what we did in our current DACs is we actually lowered the output impedance of our DAC modules. And as a result, we can get like a 75 ohm output impedance from the select DAC. And therefore, we don't need an amplifier circuit to give it a stronger drive. Before, if the DAC module was a 1K output, you would need a buffer. Well, we just made it to where our DAC modules don't actually need a buffer.
I see.
And so it's always been our belief, the best thing you can do is nothing to the sound. So that's why it's as clean as possible on the output. It's just a few passive components between the point of conversion and the output.
Okay, very, very interesting points. What is new for you guys this year? What are you showing that is available here in Munich for the first time, or what is interesting?
All right. So this year we're showing our digital director again, which was introduced last year, but the production has taken a while to get off the ground. We've been battling with the chip shortages. Some of those parts have taken 2 years to get from the manufacturers, so it's been a difficult hurdle to get that production off the ground. But we've been shipping almost 3 productions now of the digital director. The digital director is sort of a new concept for our company. It's kind of the next step as we see it in digital audio playback. What the digital director does is it takes your digital sources and processing out of the DAC. So the DAC is where digital meets analog, and analog circuitry is very sensitive to noise. And again, sort of like what we talked about with the power supplies, physical distance is key for noise because no matter how much isolation, there's an efficiency to isolation that you get some bleed through. So with the digital director, we're able to completely remove digital inputs, renderers, network, USB, computer sources into a completely isolated chassis, and then we run a fiber connection in between. So you get no transfer of noise, and so that's sort of it's new feature to add to the DAC playback. Okay,
so just to be clear, the inputs are going inside the digital director,
yes.
And then from the DAC. Okay, so
yes.
So all the inputs and all the models that users have in their own DACs, they're like transferred to the digital director.
Yeah, all the modules simply unplug, put them in the digital director, and then the director goes directly to the DAC. And you can have a kilometer of distance between the two. You can separate them physically. So what a lot of customers will do is put the digital director in like another room or the back of the listening room out of the way with their servers and noisy sources on a separate power, send that signal to the DAC, keep it nice and quiet.
Yeah, so we have 2 customers that have taken this distance, and they actually have moved the director and the digital sources over 30 meters away from the DAC and amplifiers. So, we've had to make 30-meter cables for them because that's how far apart their digital and analog sources are now in their home.
Okay.
Whereas before, they had to be next to each other.
Is it available for all the DACs? What about the previous DACs?
So the digital director is available for all of our current shipping DACs, which includes the discrete, premier, reference, and select. There's 3 models of the digital director: the premier, reference, and select. The premier has a switching power supply built in, and again, because we've got this separated, the noise of the power supply is less important, so it doesn't have an external power supply. But if you get the reference or select, it comes with a linear discrete power supply that we've built ourselves, and that does improve the performance of the digital director.
Okay, very interesting again. Regarding your power amps, so I saw the photos of how you build them on your site. I have to say that I drooled over them. It's unbelievable how you guys build those power amps. So again, you guys are very, very famous for your DACs, but your power amps look totally amazing. Maybe a few words about them.
Yeah, our amplifier designs kind of evolved out of necessity. We made our DACs better and better, and we were looking for lower noise floors in our playback, and we couldn't find amplifiers that were really as revealing as we needed. So in-house we developed some amplifiers, started using them, took them to shows, and people were like, you should sell these. And that's basically how our amp division started.
Yeah, the first amps we had at a show were not for sale. They were for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was the most requested product at the show.
They had no on-off switch. It was just plug in
the power and they turned
very
on.
crude.
What year we are talking about?
This was the
original
M200. It was a cylindrical amp.
Round blue amplifier.
Yeah.
So what year was it?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It's got to be like 12.
Long enough,
it's got to be 12 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, 12 years.
Okay.
It's been a while. And as we saw the potential for amplifiers and what they could do in MSB systems, we put more and more time and effort into them. And our newest amps, as you've seen, fully modular design, like everything is just all out, best of the best. Like we really, if we were going to do it, we just wanted to make something that was unique in the industry. We didn't want to just add more amplifiers to what's already existing.
Yeah, so our current amp design is radically different than our previous amps. We loved our previous amps. People hated the round blue amplifiers. And so we decided, well, if we're going to sell amps, let's do it right. So we spent over 2 years taking everything we've learned making our previous amps, and we made the new product series. And the reason why we make it all modular is we've also designed the amps to be as long life as possible. Every part in our amplifier is the longest life rated part you can get. We don't want somebody to have to recap their amplifier for 20 years. We don't want to say, okay, every year you need to change your caps out. No, that's not what we do. We want the amp to sit there and just work.
Yeah.
So that's why things are modules. If there's ever an issue, you can just swap out a board. We have everything is tested independently. So we have all the output boards, they're all independently tested. All the power boards are independently tested. Then they come together and get tested as a system.
Yeah. We know how it is to have an amp fail and then have to get sent back to a manufacturer. So with our modular design, like every component is easily swappable. So even power devices are segmented out on different plates. So if anything happens in the field, we can easily send replacement, gain stages out to the customer or to a technician locally, have them open it up, fix it, and you're back working in a week instead of 2 months. And so that's a really important thing for us because we're going to be supporting these amps for the next 10, 20 years, and we want to make sure that it's something that we can support.
Okay.
And we'll figure out how it goes when we actually have a failure. So, just to be clear, the amps aren't failing. We just made it so where it is easy to repair in 5 or 10 years if needed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So in that case, I think that my final question would be, what is next for MSB?
Let's see. So we're a small company. We're about 15 people. We've got Jonathan, another engineer who does some circuit design, and then me who does mechanical design. And together we are always playing with new ideas. So sometimes it takes longer because of material shortages. Sometimes it doesn't, but we have a bunch of projects right now that we're working on.
So something is cooking.
But always, and if it turns out not to be good, we're going to throw it in the trash can
and no one will
start something new. No one will hear about it. So
yeah, we don't sell or release a product unless we're 100% happy with it. We have made entire product series before to completion, decided we weren't happy with it, and threw them away.
Yeah.
So, things we're working on now, we could be happy with them, or we might go, it's not what we want, and we delete and we start over.
Yeah, we might learn a few key insights,
Yeah.
and then the project gets scrapped, and we take those few good insights and move them to the next project.
Yeah. So, we're engineers, we're always thinking.
Yeah.
Every day, every night.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the MSB fans have something to wait for, so thank you for that. Okay.
There will always be something new in the future.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that we can conclude with that. Thank you so much for this interview. It was very interesting for me personally, and I'm sure it will be interesting for our audience. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Anton.